The coffee in the break room on the 12th floor always tasted like burnt copper and broken dreams. I'm Bradley Harper, 47 years old, and I'd been drinking that terrible coffee for 8 years at Apex Defense Solutions in Crystal City, Virginia. To everyone else in the office, I was just another middle-aged analyst in khakis and polo shirts, the guy who knew where all the files were and never made waves. That was exactly the point. You don't survive 15 years in Navy intelligence and another 8 years handling CIA assets by standing out. You blend in, you become the furniture. The reliable guy who shows up early, stays late, and keeps his mouth shut about the real work happening behind those boring spreadsheets. I stood by the window watching the morning rush hour crawl toward the Pentagon across the river. My reflection stared back, graying hair, tired eyes, the kind of face you forget 5 minutes after meeting. Perfect for a man whose job was managing the digital lifeline to our most valuable human intelligence asset inside the Russian Ministry of Defense. Asset codename, Tungsten. Real identity, classified. Value to American national security, priceless. Years of operation, 11 and counting. The man had been feeding us intel on Russian nuclear capabilities since before most of these young hotshots even knew what a security clearance was. The secondary firewall that protected his communications used AES 256 encryption with rotating keys that changed every 72 hours. His data packets were disguised as corrupted database entries, masked by a custom protocol I'd spent 3 years perfecting. Russian counterintelligence had never detected the pattern because there wasn't one. Each transmission looked like random system errors. "Brad!" The voice cut through the morning quiet like nails on a chalkboard. Jordan Walsh, 32 years old, our new director of digital operations, came strutting across the floor in his designer sneakers and $1,000 suit. Stanford MBA, crypto enthusiast, and the kind of guy who used disrupt as punctuation. He'd been at the company exactly 3 weeks and already thought he owned the place. "Morning briefing in 5, Jordan announced, not bothering to look up from his phone. "We're talking about the new efficiency protocols. Time to drag this place into the 21st century. I nodded and grabbed my coffee mug. The one that said, "World's Most Average Employee," a gift I'd bought myself to maintain the cover. Jordan had no idea he was talking to a man who'd coordinated intelligence operations in 14 countries. To him, I was just Bradley from compliance, the guy who slowed things down with annoying questions about protocols. The conference room was one of those glass boxes designed to make everyone feel exposed. Jordan was already there, spinning in the leather chair at the head of the table like he was running Apple instead of a mid-tier defense contractor. 6 junior analysts sat around the table, tablets ready, eager to impress the golden boy. "All right, team," Jordan began, finally looking up. "I've been reviewing our data flows, and frankly, I'm seeing a lot of inefficiency. We're bottlenecking client requests with all these legacy security checks." I knew this was trouble. The legacy security checks he was talking about included the SCIF-level protocols that kept Tungsten alive. "The Pentagon wants real-time analytics," Jordan continued. "They want speed. We're going to give it to them by streamlining our firewall architecture. I'm authorizing a bypass on the secondary firewall for outbound data. We go live Friday morning." The room went quiet. Even the junior analysts knew that sounded risky. "You can't do that," I said quietly. Jordan's head snapped toward me. "Excuse me?" "The secondary firewall isn't just for data integrity," I explained, keeping my voice level. "It's a masking protocol for source protection. If you bypass it, certain data signatures become visible to anyone monitoring our outbound traffic." Jordan laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Bradley, Bradley, Bradley. This is exactly the kind of thinking that's holding us back. Fear-based decision-making, legacy mindset." He leaned forward. "I'm the director here, not you. And I'm telling you that we're moving forward. If you can't adapt to the new paradigm, maybe it's time to consider early retirement." There it was, the threat wrapped in corporate speak. I looked around the room. The young analysts were staring at their tablets, suddenly very interested in whatever was on their screens. They knew something was wrong, but they weren't about to challenge the golden boy. I opened my laptop and pretended to take notes, but my mind was racing. Jordan wasn't just incompetent, he was dangerous. He had no idea that the data he wanted to streamline included encrypted communications from Tungsten, carefully disguised as corrupted database entries. If those packets hit the open internet without the secondary firewall's masking protocols, Russian counterintelligence would spot them in hours. My laptop gave a soft ping. It wasn't an email notification. It was a custom alert from a background process I'd been running for years, monitoring for priority communications. A single word appeared in the corner of my screen, disguised as a system update. Tungsten. This was bad news. That wasn't a scheduled check-in. Tungsten only sent unscheduled signals when he was in immediate danger. I glanced at the screen. Another word appeared. Solstice. Now I had a real problem. Solstice was the code for blown cover. Tungsten was compromised. He needed emergency extraction, and he needed it now. Bradley? Jordan's voice cut through my panic. Are we boring you? Just processing the implications, I said, closing the laptop. When exactly are you planning to implement this bypass? Friday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Jordan smiled like he'd just announced a company picnic. I want everyone here to witness the new era of efficiency. I walked out of that meeting with steady steps, but inside I was calculating odds and timelines. Tungsten was burned, possibly captured, and this arrogant kid was about to light up his digital fingerprints like a beacon for every Russian intelligence officer on the planet. Back at my desk, I opened a secure terminal and typed in a query that looked like routine system maintenance. In reality, it was a heartbeat ping to Tungsten's emergency contact protocol. The system used a hidden partition that communicated through port 443, disguised as routine HTTPS traffic to a legitimate banking website in Switzerland. I waited 30 seconds. Nothing. I tried again with the backup frequency. Still nothing. That meant one of two things. Tungsten was already dead, or he was on the run and couldn't risk digital contact. Either way, Jordan's efficiency project was about to turn a crisis into a catastrophe. I needed to stop Jordan, but I couldn't just walk into his office and explain that we were running a CIA operation out of the 12th floor. That information was compartmentalized at levels that would make Jordan's security clearance look like a library card. But I could do something else. Something I'd hoped I'd never have to use. 5 years ago, when I first started working at Apex, I'd built a fail-safe into the company's network architecture. A logic bomb, they called it in the business. Dormant code that would activate under specific conditions. I'd designed it as a dead man's switch. If my access was ever revoked without the proper CIA authorization codes, the system would silently tag every administrative action taken afterward and mirror it to a secure server farm in Langley. It was insurance, and Jordan was about to help me file a claim. At 2 p.m., the email hit everyone's inbox. Organizational restructuring, effective immediately. Jordan was cleaning house, consolidating departments, and optimizing human resources for maximum efficiency. I read through the corporate jargon and immediately understood the real problem. He wasn't just changing procedures, he was dismantling the compartmentalization protocols that kept our operation legal and our assets alive. Jordan called it Project Transparency. He wanted to merge the civilian analysts with the government liaison officers. In plain English, he wanted the people who fixed the printers to have the same data access as the people routing classified intelligence. This wasn't just incompetence anymore, this was criminally negligent. Under the Intelligence Community Directive 704, what Jordan was proposing violated at least 6 federal statutes and could result in espionage charges. I walked to Jordan's office. His door was wide open, part of his open leadership philosophy. He was standing at a whiteboard, drawing circles and arrows that meant absolutely nothing. Jordan, we need to talk about Project Transparency. He turned, marker in hand, grinning like he'd just solved world hunger. Bradley! Brilliant, right? No more silos, no more secrets. One big, efficient organism. You can't merge those clearance levels, I said. It violates federal contracting law under Title 50 U.S.C. Section 30024. It violates our agreements with the Department of Defense, and it compromises active intelligence operations. Jordan capped the marker with an exaggerated click. There you go again. Violates law. Compromises operations. Bradley, I talked to legal. They said as long as we have internal NDAs, we're covered. Legal reviews contracts, not operational security. There are active human assets whose communications run through our servers. If you drop those compartment barriers, those assets are exposed to hostile intelligence services. Jordan walked closer, invading my personal space. He smelled like expensive cologne and entitlement. Let me be crystal clear, he said, his voice dropping to a patronizing whisper. I was hired to modernize this company. You represent everything I was brought here to eliminate. I don't care about your human assets. I care about efficiency metrics and board presentations. If you can't get on board with the new direction, maybe you're not the right cultural fit." "Efficiency at the cost of lives is negligence," I said. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd crossed his line. Jordan's smile vanished. "Lives? It's a server farm, Bradley, not a battlefield. But you know what? I'm done with this conversation. I'm restructuring personnel too, and I'm looking for team players, not obstacles." I left his office knowing Jordan was going to burn the house down to prove he could fix the plumbing. And there was nothing I could do to stop him through official channels, but I didn't need official channels. That evening, I went home to my small apartment in Arlington and opened my personal laptop. I accessed a partition that Apex's IT department didn't know existed and began writing code, not the logic bomb that was already in place, waiting. This was something else, a denial of service protocol that would activate the moment Jordan executed his transparency project. I called it Operation Checkmate. When Jordan's system tried to merge the databases, my code would flood the network routers with billions of conflicting DNS requests, specifically targeting the handshake protocols between the civilian and classified partitions. The system would crash before the merge could complete, but not before logging every administrative override Jordan had made. The beauty of it was the timing. Jordan's bypass would trigger first, creating the security violation. Then my crash would stop it, making me look like the hero who prevented a bigger disaster. Thursday passed like watching a slow-motion car crash. Jordan was on a victory lap, high-fiving developers and ordering pizza for the whole floor. He'd scheduled the transparency launch for Friday morning and was calling it Liberation Day. I monitored the company's internal communications from my desk, watching the preparations unfold. At 10 a.m., a junior systems administrator named Kevin Rodriguez flagged an anomaly in the security logs. Irregular encrypted traffic detected on secure partition. His trouble ticket read, "Pattern suggests active intelligence communication protocols. Recommend immediate security review before system modifications." Kevin was sharp. He'd spotted the digital breadcrumbs that Tungsten's communications left behind. Port 443 traffic with unusual packet sizes, encrypted headers that didn't match standard web traffic, and timing patterns that suggested human rather than automated sources. I watched the ticket status update 15 minutes later. Closed by Jordan Walsh. Resolution: ignore legacy artifacts. Proceed with scheduled migration. Stop chasing ghosts, Kevin. Jordan wasn't just ignoring warning signs, he was actively suppressing them to protect his timeline. He was choosing his ego over national security, his promotion over American intelligence assets. My secure phone buzzed. Text message from a number that didn't officially exist. Asset status: critical. FSB activity confirmed. Requires immediate extraction support. It was Eric Donovan, the deputy station chief. Tungsten was still alive, but barely. And tomorrow morning, Jordan was going to paint his digital signature in neon for every Russian intelligence officer monitoring American communications. I typed back, "Understood. Initiating contingency protocol. Time to see if 20 years of experience could beat 3 weeks of arrogance." Friday morning, 8:55 a.m. I wasn't in the building, but I could picture the scene perfectly. Jordan would be standing at the front of the operations floor, probably holding his Disrupt Everything coffee mug. The junior analysts would be at their stations, waiting for the signal to merge the databases. The big screens would be displaying the network topology, currently green, about to turn Jordan's favorite shade of optimized blue. I was sitting in my car in the underground garage, laptop connected to a high-gain antenna. I'd parked 3 spots from the elevator, close enough to penetrate their guest Wi-Fi, but far enough to avoid the security cameras. The parking garage had concrete pillars that would scatter any RF detection if building security was running sweeps. My phone buzzed. Eric Donovan again. Asset moving to extraction point. Window closes at 09:30 Moscow time. That's 02:30 our time. If the system crashes on schedule, we can mask his final transmission as network noise. I typed back, "Roger. Initiating in 60 seconds. 9 o'clock a.m. Process initiated." On my screen, the network traffic monitor spiked. Jordan had pulled the trigger. The firewalls dropped. The disparate databases, HR records, payroll, contractor information, and highly classified intelligence routing protocols began merging into his vision of corporate transparency. For exactly 2.7 seconds, it worked perfectly. I could see the data flow graphs in real time as Jordan's efficiency protocols stripped away years of carefully constructed security barriers. Then Operation Checkmate detonated. The denial of service code I'd injected through the guest Wi-Fi flooded the network routers with 847 million DNS requests per second, each one targeting the handshake protocols between the merged databases. The attack was surgical. It only hit the pathways Jordan had just opened, leaving normal business operations untouched. On my screen, the traffic graph didn't just spike, it flatlined completely. Inside the building, every screen would be freezing, alarms would be blaring, and the server room fans would be spinning up to maximum RPM, sounding like jet engines. The emergency power systems would kick in, thinking the building was under cyber attack. I watched the guest Wi-Fi signal flicker and die. The entire building's external communications went dark. But in those 2.7 seconds before the crash, a single data packet had escaped. A packet containing Tungsten's masked communication signature, transmitted in partial clear text for the first time in 11 years. My secure phone buzzed immediately. Message from Eric. Leak detected, Russian SIGINT stations just went active. They caught something. I felt the weight of what had just happened. Jordan had been too fast, or my code had been a fraction too slow. But maybe 2.7 seconds wasn't enough time for the Russians to triangulate the source. Maybe Tungsten still had a chance. I drove across the Potomac to a diner in Arlington. From there, I could see the chaos unfolding at Apex Defense Solutions. People were gathering in the lobby, confusion spreading like wildfire. Emergency vehicles were pulling up, fire trucks, thinking the alarms meant an actual fire. 2 police cars followed, responding to reports of a possible cyber attack. My phone started buzzing with texts from former colleagues. Jennifer Thompson from accounting. Bradley, everything's down. Jordan's having a complete meltdown. Security's locking down the building. Kevin Rodriguez from systems. The logs are completely corrupted, but I grabbed screenshots before the crash. There were Russian IP addresses probing our servers right when the merge started. What exactly were we processing? Kevin was smart. He was connecting the dots, and if he was figuring it out, the FBI would too when they started their investigation. At 10:30 a.m., the first real consequence arrived. Angela Vane, Apex's general counsel, pulled up in a black Lincoln. She stormed into the building like an avenging angel in Armani. 30 minutes later, the automated security systems at 3 Pentagon contracting offices detected the data breach and immediately suspended all active contracts with Apex Defense Solutions. $47 million in revenue, gone in the time it takes to send an email. Jordan's efficiency project had just cost the company its primary revenue stream in under 2 hours. At 11:45 a.m., my secure phone rang. It was Eric. Asset secured, he said without preamble. Extraction successful. He made it to the Helsinki station, with the backup intelligence files intact. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. And the leak? Russian counterintelligence is still chasing shadows. They detected the signature, but the system crash created enough digital noise to mask the source location. They know there's a mole somewhere in their ministry, but they don't know who. What about the company? We're taking over. Directors flying in from Langley with a forensic team. We need you to testify about what happened. You need to walk back into that building and point the finger. They'll arrest me for corporate sabotage. No, they won't, because you're walking in with federal agents. At 2 p.m., Jordan emerged from the building looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 6 hours. No suit today, just jeans and a company polo shirt. He was carrying a cardboard box of personal items. Security was escorting him to his car. I watched from across the street as he loaded the box into his Tesla and drove away. He had no idea that his career in defense contracting was over. The security clearance revocation would be permanent. The federal investigation would follow him wherever he went. But that wasn't enough. Jordan had compromised a human intelligence operation and endangered an American asset. In my world, that required more than just getting fired. My phone buzzed with a text from Eric. Monday morning, 0600. 2 black SUVs, executive garage, bring your testimony notes. I typed back, Roger, time to finish this. Jordan thought he'd disrupted the old way of doing business. He had no idea that the old way of doing business was about to disrupt him right back. Sunday night, I sat in my Arlington apartment preparing my testimony for the Senate Intelligence Committee. 20 years of experience had taught me that patience beats speed, Preparation beats innovation, and competence always wins over arrogance. Jordan was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Monday morning, 6 a.m., two black Chevy Suburbans rolled into Apex's executive parking garage with the predatory grace of sharks entering a reef. They didn't stop at the security checkpoint. The barrier arm lifted automatically, overridden by federal override codes that most people didn't know existed. I sat in the back of the second vehicle, wearing my best Navy suit instead of my usual khakis and polo. Next to me was Eric Donovan, looking like a high school geography teacher who could dismantle a terrorist cell with a paperclip and a phone book. "Ready for this?" Eric asked as we parked in the spots marked CEO and Director of Operations. "I've been ready since Thursday," I said. We walked through the lobby with 4 other agents, their credentials hanging from neck chains like badges of authority. The overnight security guard saw the CIA identifications and suddenly found his computer screen extremely interesting. We took the elevator straight to the executive conference room. Scott Patterson, the CEO, was already there, looking like a man who'd aged a decade over the weekend. Jordan was there too, flanked by 2 expensive lawyers in $1,000 suits looking like he'd been hit by a freight train. "Who the hell are you people?" Jordan demanded as we entered. "You can't just barge into a private facility. This is corporate harassment." "It was a private facility," Eric said calmly, walking to the head of the mahogany table. He dropped a thick manila folder that hit the surface like a gunshot. "Now it's a federal crime scene." "Crime scene?" Patterson squeaked. "Central Intelligence Agency," Eric announced, flashing his credentials. "And your Director of Operations just burned our most valuable intelligence asset in the Eastern Hemisphere." Jordan's face went white. "CIA? You're joking. This is a data processing company. We handle payroll for government contractors." "That's your cover story," I said, stepping forward. Jordan stared at me like I was a ghost. "You fired me. Bradley Harper is a GS-15 intelligence liaison," Eric continued. "He was embedded here under deep cover to manage a compartmentalized data stream containing communications from a human intelligence asset inside hostile foreign territory. I was optimizing workflow efficiency," Jordan stammered. "Your optimization transmitted the digital signature of a deep cover operative to Russian signals intelligence," Eric interrupted. "At exactly 9:03 a.m. on Friday, your database merge sent an unencrypted packet header containing his communication protocols. By 11 a.m. Moscow time, FSB counterintelligence units were conducting active sweeps of the Russian Ministry of Defense." Jordan looked from Eric to me to his lawyers, who were scribbling notes frantically. "He didn't tell me," Jordan whispered. "He just talked about compliance protocols and legacy systems." "I told you it was dangerous," I said, my voice steady as steel. "I told you it violated federal security statutes. I told you people's lives were at risk. You told me I was dead weight holding back progress." Eric opened the folder and spread out printed documents. "We need access to everything. Every server, every hard drive, every email. Specifically, we need audit logs of Mr. Walsh's administrative overrides and security bypasses." "Of course," Patterson said quickly. "Whatever you need. Full cooperation." Eric turned to Jordan. "You're not leaving this building. Federal agents are executing search warrants at your residence and your vehicle as we speak." "Search warrants?" Jordan's voice cracked. "For what charges?" "Violations of the Espionage Act, gross negligence in handling classified information, reckless endangerment of intelligence assets." Eric leaned forward. "You wanted to disrupt the old way of doing business, Mr. Walsh. Congratulations. You just disrupted American national security." The next 72 hours were a forensic dissection of everything Jordan had touched since arriving at Apex. CIA technical specialists, people who made Jordan's Stanford computer science degree look like a community college certificate, tore apart the network architecture piece by piece. I sat in Jordan's former office, a irony that wasn't lost on me, guiding federal experts through the damage assessment. Here I pointed to a section of code displayed on the wall monitor. This is where he bypassed the SSL certificate verification protocols. He manually disabled encryption authentication to reduce handshake latency by 0.3 seconds. The lead technician, a woman who'd written encryption standards for the NSA, shook her head in disbelief. He disabled SSL authentication on a top-secret intelligence relay to save 0.3 of a second? He was optimizing for efficiency, I said. Down the hall, Jordan was undergoing what the CIA politely called cooperative debriefing, but looked suspiciously like an interrogation. Through the conference room walls, I could hear his voice sometimes, rising in desperate pitches as he tried to explain away a decade-ending mistake. "I didn't know it was real intelligence work," he shouted at one point. "Nobody told me we were handling actual classified communications." But the server logs told a different story. Every warning Kevin had filed, every security alert the system had generated, every protocol violation Jordan had authorized, it was all documented with timestamps that proved willful negligence rather than innocent mistake. Thursday afternoon, I received a call that would change everything. "Senate Select Committee on Intelligence," Eric said. "Closed session, SCIF environment. They want to hear from the handler who prevented a complete intelligence disaster." The hearing was held in a windowless room beneath the Capitol building, where cell phones went to die and secrets went to be judged. I sat alone at the witness table, facing 15 senators who looked tired, angry, and deeply concerned about national security. Behind me, Patterson and Jordan sat with their legal teams. Jordan looked like he'd lost 20 pounds in a week. Senator Ryan Reynolds, the committee chair, adjusted his reading glasses. "Mr. Harper, you served as CIA liaison for how long?" 8 years at this assignment, Senator. Before that, 15 years naval intelligence. "And in that time, did you experience any security breaches of this magnitude?" "Never, sir. Not until Mr. Walsh's efficiency initiative." Reynolds flipped through documents. "The forensic report indicates that you actually prevented a much larger intelligence disaster. Your denial of service attack stopped the data leak after only 2.7 seconds instead of potentially hours." "That's correct, Senator. If the system hadn't crashed when it did, our asset's entire operational history would have been transmitted in clear text." "Mr. Harper," Reynolds continued, "in your professional assessment, was this security breach preventable?" I turned to look directly at Jordan. He was staring at his hands, no longer the confident disruptor who'd walked into my life 3 weeks ago. "It wasn't just preventable, Senator. It was predicted," I warned him, "through proper channels. I documented the risks in writing. I explained the legal violations. He chose to interpret security protocols as obstacles to his personal advancement." Reynolds removed his glasses. "The committee finds that Mr. Walsh's actions constituted gross negligence resulting in the compromise of vital national security assets." The hearing lasted 6 hours. By the end, Jordan's security clearance was permanently revoked, his career in government contracting was finished, and criminal charges were pending. As we left the Capitol building, Jordan made one last attempt at conversation. "Bradley," he said quietly, "I really didn't know. You have to believe me." I stopped and looked at him, really looked at him, for the last time. "The problem wasn't that you didn't know, Jordan. The problem was that you didn't care to know. You thought intelligence work was just data on a screen. You forgot that data represents real people risking their lives for this country." 6 months later, I received my promotion to Deputy Director of Technical Operations at CIA headquarters in Langley. My office has no windows, which is exactly how I prefer it. The coffee is much better than what they served at Apex. Jordan? Last I heard, he was working at a startup in Austin, far from anything requiring security clearances. His LinkedIn profile says he's exploring opportunities in innovative disruption. Some people never learn, but that's not my problem anymore. Experience beats enthusiasm, patience beats speed, competence beats arrogance. And sometimes the quiet guy in khakis who knows where all the secrets are buried is exactly the person you need when everything falls apart. I still guard those secrets, it's what I do, and I'm very good at it.